Galaxy Fighter. In this lesson, we will look at how we can make our code run on different iOS devices. As you know, there are different devices running iOS. There are non-Retina iPhones and iPhone touches with resolution of 320 by 480. There is the iPad with resolution of 768 by 1024. And there is Retina iPhones and iPhone touches with resolution of 640 by 960. Now, if you make an application, the question is on what kind of devices will it run? If you make an application that supports only non-Retina iPhone, it will actually be able to run on both iPad and Retina iPhone. Of course, you will not take advantage of the bigger screen on iPad and the higher resolution on Retina iPhone. But what if you want to make your app take advantage of the bigger screen on iPad and higher resolution on Retina iPhone? That is what we are going to look at in this lesson. You might ask yourself the question, why did Apple develop the Retina display? The non-Retina iPhone has 163 pixels per inch. That is, if you take a piece of line which is 1 inch long, you can fit 163 pixels on it. The Retina iPhone has 326 pixels per inch. And according to Steve Jobs, 300 ppi is a magic number. In fact, he says that the human eye can't distinguish more than 300 ppi. So, in theory, Retina display gives the maximal possible resolution for the human eye. And that means that we will see iPad with Retina displays soon. When you develop your application, you must ask yourself what devices you want to support. In scenario 1, you only support non-Retina iPhones. In scenario 2, you support both non-Retina iPhones and Retina iPhones. In scenario 3, you only write your app for the iPad. That might be a good solution when your app only makes sense on the big iPad screen. In scenario 4, you support all 3 devices. Let's look at these scenarios a little more in detail. Scenario 1, that is only non-Retina iPhone. The advantage is that you only have to maintain one code and one set of images. The disadvantage is that you don't benefit from the high-resolution Retina display and the big screen of the iPad. Scenario 2 is support for non-Retina iPhones and Retina iPhones. In this case, you can have one code but must have 2 sets of images. Advantage is that you can use the higher resolution Retina display maximally. Scenario 3 is support only for iPad. You have only one code and one set of images. You can take maximal advantage of the big screen in iPad. But the disadvantage is that you will not have any iPhone customers. Scenario 4 is that you support all 3 devices. The disadvantage is that you have to keep track of 2 sets of codes and 3 sets of images. The advantage is that you can maximally use the different screens and that you can maximize the number of customers. There are also some hybrid solutions because few people want to maintain 2 sets of code. But in this case, they have to have extra code for sensing if the iPad or the iPhone is running and for scaling and translating the images properly. Normally in this scenario, we use the fact that the screen size of the iPhone Retina display is very close to the screen size of iPad. But we will of course not use some pixels along the edges of the iPad, but that might be acceptable. Here is what we will choose in our project. We will choose scenario 2, that is one code and 2 sets of images for support of non-retina display as well as retina display, but no special iPad support. Later we will add iPad support. The reason is that this is a course, and I don't want to make the code unnecessarily complex. Here are the steps we need to take when supporting Retina display. First, we have to enable Retina display. Second, we need to add -HD extension to all double-sized images. If you're working with UIKit, you have to add @2x extension. But that was impossible for technical reasons in Cocos 2D, so we use -HD instead. When we maintain our images, we will try to maintain just one set of images and scale down or up manually when needed. You might think that it is much better to save the larger images and scale down, but that is not always so. The reason is that if you design for larger screen size, you will be disappointed when you later scale down. It is much better to do it the other way around, and then scale up. But in order not to lose quality, you should use vector graphics. Now, there might be cases when you don't have a particular image as a vector graphics, but only in pixel format. And in that case, you will save it in larger format, but before you do, you have to edit the image so it also works with smaller sizes. How do we enable Retina support in our code? If you go to AppDelegate, you will find the following lines, where these 2 lines are commented out, and you'll have to uncomment them. Then this line, Director Enable Retina Display Yes, will do its magic. And that is actually all you have to do in Cocos 2D. Here are some things you need to be aware of. Loading textures into memory is one of the most intensive operations, and that is really the reason why we have to have 2 sets of images. The other thing is that the difference between pixels and points is what makes it possible to run one piece of code on 2 sets of images. The reason is that Cocos 2D code works with points and not pixels. As you can see on a non-retina display, 1 point equals 1 pixel, but on a retina display, 1 point equals 4 pixels. As you can see, a pixel is much smaller on retina than on non-retina, but the points are exactly the same. And that means that you don't have to change your code. As I said before, the code works with points. I want to end this lesson by looking into the future. Touchscreen devices are multiplying like rabbits, and all kinds of sizes will come in the future. It will not stop at the current iPhone and iPad sizes. We need to be prepared and work with scalable graphics, and that will save us the trouble of recreating graphics for different devices. So we should use vector graphics. Use Illustrator, and in Photoshop use shape layers and smart objects. If you don't know what shape layers and smart objects are in Photoshop, then Google for them and read about them. That's all for this lesson. Thank you for watching.